Have you ever wondered what makes a villain unforgettable? It's not just their evil deeds or their grand plans to conquer the world. It's the deeper layers, the parts of them that echo with our own fears and desires. Picture this: a villain standing in the shadows, but instead of malice, there's a glimpse of pain in their eyes. What if the villain's greatest enemy isn't the hero, but their own struggle to belong, to be loved, or to heal? It's the vulnerability behind their cruelty that makes them real, because every villain starts as a person. They once had dreams, fears, and a moral compass, but somewhere along the way, they lost their way. Think of your favorite villains: Darth Vader, Sauron, Maleficent. Do you remember their struggles, their backstory, or were they just evil for evil's sake? If you want to create a villain that sticks with your audience, you need to do more than make them bad. You need to make them human. Every villain has a reason for their actions, even if it's warped or twisted. Without that reason, they're just a monster. But when their motivations reflect something we can relate to, a past heartbreak, a betrayal, an unspeakable loss, that's where the real power lies. It's what makes us, as readers or viewers, question whether we would act differently in their shoes. How would we behave if we were given the same choices, the same scars? Writing a compelling villain starts with asking one critical question: what made them this way? Now that we've tapped into the emotional core of a villain, let's take a deeper look into the process of creating one. A villain isn't just the antagonist. They're a reflection of the protagonist's journey, a mirror of what could happen if the hero makes different choices. Imagine your hero's internal battle. They want to do good, but there's a temptation to take the easier, darker path. This is where your villain comes in. They've already taken that path, and it's this contrast that sets them apart. Think about villains like Loki or the Joker. On the surface, they're chaotic, unpredictable forces of destruction. But dig deeper, and you'll find that they embody a kind of freedom. The freedom to embrace their flaws, their chaos, and their anger without apology. That's what makes them compelling. They don't fit neatly into the good versus evil box. They are complex, conflicted, and multidimensional. Your villain doesn't have to be inherently evil to be dangerous. They can be misunderstood, even sympathetic, with just a few bad choices steering them into the shadows. For example, look at Azula from Avatar, The Last Airbender. She starts as a perfectionist, a product of a family where power is everything. Her descent into madness isn't driven by a thirst for power alone, but by her need for approval, her fear of failure. In her mind, she's doing what's necessary to maintain control. This is the trick. Make your villain's goals seem reasonable, even justifiable. When your villain feels like they're fighting for something real, they become infinitely more interesting. It's the difference between a bad guy and a character we want to understand, even empathize with. So, what drives your villain? What's their ultimate goal? And more importantly, how does that goal conflict with your hero's journey? Now, here's where things get really interesting. What if the villain doesn't know they're the villain? What if, in their own mind, they are the hero of their story? This is the twist that transforms a typical antagonist into a truly compelling character. The best villains often believe they are justified in their actions. They may even think they're doing good in the world. This creates a fascinating dynamic. The villain's morality isn't black and white, and neither is the hero's. The true conflict arises from the question, who's right? Take the example of Thanos from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Thanos isn't driven by a desire for chaos or power. He's convinced that his actions will save the universe from overpopulation and resource depletion. In his mind, he's making a tough, necessary choice, but the horror of his actions lies in the scale of his solution. The twist here is that his mission, while horrific, is rooted in his perception of a greater good. This twist creates a moral gray area that forces the audience to consider whether the villain's plan could have some merit. It challenges our own beliefs, making us question how far we would go to save something we believe in. By making your villain see themselves as the hero, you're not just adding layers to their personality. You're giving them agency. They're not a mindless force of evil. They're a player with a stake in the game, whose actions affect the world in significant ways. What would make your villain believe they're the hero? What makes them fight for their cause, even at the expense of others? This is where your villain stops being an obstacle for the hero and starts becoming a tragic figure in their own right. At this point, you've crafted a villain with depth, with emotion and a backstory that makes sense. Now, it's time to bring it all home. Your villain's arc should mirror your hero's, but in reverse. Where the hero rises through struggle and self-discovery, the villain falls, twisted by their choices. But that doesn't mean they can't be redeemed. And that's the key to making them unforgettable. The villain's downfall should be a direct result of their beliefs, their refusal to change, or their inability to see the bigger picture. This makes their fall from grace just as tragic as the hero's rise to greatness. But don't forget, even in their defeat, the villain should leave a lasting impact on the hero and on your audience. The most powerful villains are the ones that change the hero. They make them question their beliefs or push them to be better. If you want your villain to stick with your audience long after the story ends, make them human. Make them relatable. Make them real. And in the end, make them feel like the kind of person we could have been, or the kind of person we fear becoming. So, what are you waiting for? It's time to create a villain who makes your readers question everything they thought they knew about good and evil. Let them walk away from your story asking, could I have been the villain all along?